All right. Welcome to Tuesday Motivation and Conversation. Of course, I had planned to get back with you guys last week, and that didn't happen. Life was lifing, and things were happening, family things were happening, business things were happening, but we are back and we are continuing um, our series on self-work framework. And so, of course, the entire series is out there um, for your leisure to go and watch these sessions, whenever it's convenient for you. So I'm not going to try to recap anything more than the actual framework itself. And then I want to encourage you to go back and look at the previous sessions 1 through 5. And so I started on January 1st, and then over time, I've continued to progress with this content on self-work framework. And so the self work framework includes self reflection, self awareness, self knowledge, self direction, and self leadership. And so we are still on self reflection because, as I told you guys early on, I am not rushing through this because there's so much here. There's so much to get through. And I think the more you know and have the ability to process it a piece at a time, the more beneficial it would be in helping you to gain clarity. And so I've mentioned this in a previous session, but there's one statement I want to definitely kind of go through, and that is this statement about gaining clarity of vision. It's not about picking up a literal instrument, but rather it's employing a set of tools. So it's like having a toolkit or a toolbox, and that alone in that set of tools and practicing that helps you to get that focus. It helps you to get the understanding, and it helps you to articulate your aspirations. And so some of the things that I have been talking about relative to those tools are those 5 areas. And so these are some of the things that help you to gain that clarity. And so self-reflection is one of the areas that we started with, and that's the very first tool in this self-work framework. And so just a little bit of a high level recap on self-reflection. That also includes self-introspection. So there are different ways that we can assess and work through self-reflection. For some people, it's journaling. So that's regularly writing down your thoughts on some type of cadence. That could be once a week, it could be every other day, it could be every morning, it could be every evening, it could be on the weekends, that could be Sundays, whatever your day is. But processing your thoughts, getting those things on paper. And it's so important to do it at some pace. And some people journal every day. For me, I used to journal every day, and I'll get on spurts now where I'll journal every day for a certain period of time. It may be for 2 weeks, it may be for 21 days, it may be, and then I'll have a little bit of a break, and then I'll come back and I'll journal again. But every day I'm writing something because it helps me to get my mind uncluttered. Because I have so many things that I do for so many different clients, I need to write things down and get things on paper because that helps me to reprocess and regenerate content in my mind. So it helps to fuel me for new content, if that makes sense. And so um, it helps me to, again, process what it is that I'm thinking. And so this whole journaling thing and the ideas that you write down helps you to process and identify your patterns. It helps you to identify values. It helps you to identify passions, right? So this is where witty ideas come up. This is where new processes emerge. This is where new clarity of certain things that you're doing in your process of vision happens. The other thing is meditation and mindfulness, okay, is a part of self-reflection and introspection. Practice Practicing mindfulness allows you to quiet the noise of daily life, right? And connect with your inner self. And this is so important because for a lot of us, it's an area that we do not like to connect with. We do not like to, and I'm not saying all of us, but some of us, we don't like to revisit things. We don't like to self-reflect because there are things in even as recent as yesterday. Sometimes you don't want to recall what happened yesterday because it may have been traumatic, it may have been stressful, it may have been something that got your blood pressure rising, it may have run you hot, as Dr. Dudley would say. It may have run you hot, so you don't want to go back and deal with that. But sometimes you want to assess what made you run hot, right? What made the fire to begin to just burn, and what fueled you? So because that's the thing you want to address, so you do not revisit those emotions on a consistent basis or over and over again. So it's important to reconnect with yourself and ask yourself questions. Okay, this went really really good. How did I perform? What could I have done differently? Could I said this differently? Right? If I'd have said it differently, how could that conversation have gone? If I had handled this particular situation a little bit differently, how could this relationship have, grown, or how could this relationship have been a little bit more successful? Or, was it, successful, and how could it be more successful? So there all of these little things, what areas do I have to improve? So this is leading yourself to greater self-awareness, which is the next step. So this is why this is important, and it's why I'm recapping. And it also helps you to really understand your desires, value your assessment. That's another area that self-reflection and introspection does. Identifying your core values. It provides a framework for making decisions aligned with your authentic self and what truly matters to you. So this is where the value assessment happens in our self reflection and introspection. This is where we assess our why, right? And the fourth area that it helps us to maintain is our strengths and our weaknesses. And I always say maximize on your strength, employ your weaknesses. So you always want to do this analysis of understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. And it helps you to leverage your talents, what you can do versus what you're called and purpose to do, and how to address these areas for improvement. So it contributes to a clearer picture of your potential. And here's the thing, every time you show up, your potential has the ability to grow. So you want to show up for yourself in doing self reflection and self introspection. So now I'm not trying to get to a whole lot of information tonight because I already know I'm not going to do it, but I wanted to make sure that I touched on this area, get back on this groove that we were discussing relative to what self-reflection does and how it gains us some clarity in some areas. And so there were some areas that we had started talking about, and I want to get back to that area and finish that piece before we go on to our next section. And so I had previously talked about doing self-reflection and self-introspection helps to give us clarity of purpose, right? So I just mentioned that a few minutes ago. That's that clarity of purpose, which is focus. It helps us to focus. Why am I doing what I'm doing, right? And so there's one scripture in particular that I want to just share, and I believe I touched on this one, but I have a couple of more, and so I want to kind of go through those, and then I want to come back and I want to go a little bit deeper on these particular areas and talk about them a little bit more. Proverbs 16:3. So this is just a perspective. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. This verse emphasizes the importance of having a clear purpose aligned with God's will. When we dedicate our actions to him, our plans are more likely to succeed because God knows the end of a thing, and he knows the beginning of a thing, and he also knows what's in the middle. And so that's the piece that we have to settle with, because God will show us a beginning, he'll show us an end, he'll allow us to start, but he don't tell us what's in the middle, although he knows it. And so that's what we have to prepare ourselves for. So here's a layman's kind of term or an analogy, so to speak. Imagine if a ship was setting sail without a destination. So you out here in the middle of the ocean, and you don't know what island you're trying to go to, what country you're trying to shift to, and it just drifts aimlessly. Similarly, without a clear purpose in life, we waste time and energy on things that don't truly matter because we don't have a destination. It's okay, Sarah, Sarah, whatever will be. And the next thing you know, a month gone by and you've not done anything, right? And so we have to stay in tune with what our purpose is. And so when we know what we're aiming for, what is our God-given purpose, not what we can do, but what we're called in purpose to do, our efforts become focused and effective. And so this is important. So it's like having a roadmap for our lives, and that's what we want to do. Establish structure, strategies, and systems. I talk about it all the time. Another example, Nehemiah in the Old Testament had a clear vision to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. Y'all know the story. This clarity of purpose drove his actions, motivated others, and ultimately led to the successful completion of the project despite significant opposition. So that's Nehemiah 2 and 6. The other area is clarity of understanding. So this is freedom from ambiguity, and the word talks about being tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine because you're not clear. Your understanding is not clear of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing and when you're supposed to be doing it. So this frees you when you have good self-reflection and introspection. It helps you to have clarity of understanding and it frees you from ambiguity. So here's another biblical perspective for this. Proverbs 4 and 7. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it costs all you have, get understanding. This highlights the value of seeking understanding to dispel confusion and make wise choices or decisions. And when we are clear, there are some decisions we will not make because if you got $100, you got a bill at home for $79, you ain't got but 21. So you thinking clearly. That bill may not be in front of you, but in your mind, you clear about your purpose and and you clear about what you got going on. So if there is something that is an opportunity for you, you ain't got but $21 worth of opportunity because you got a $79 bill at home that has to be paid. That's wisdom. So we have to make sure that we have understanding of who we are, where we are, what we have going on at all times. Now, here's a layman's perspective or explanation of that. Think about trying to assemble furniture with unclear instructions. We do it all the time. You don't even have to think about it because I know you done it because I have. So we grab stuff out of a box, we open it up, whatever it is, and we start assembling. We haven't read the directions. And while it may seem simple to do, there can be a small screw or a snap or a clip or something that will make the difference in the assembling. So you're likely end up frustrated and you end up with a table that don't even, it ain't sitting up straight, is wobbling and all this other kind of stuff. And there may be a small little washer that needs to go between two pieces to make it stand and sit level. But you don't know that because you didn't read the instructions. So likewise in life, unclear understanding leads to confusion and And this is the thing I say to those of us who are entrepreneurs. That's why we have to be clear about who we are and what we're doing as entrepreneurs because confused buyers don't buy. And poor decisions, we'll waste the effort because of the confusion. That understanding that leads to confusion and poor decision is a wasted effort. So we've wasted time trying to put together a table that we didn't take the time to get the instructions for. So you spend 30 minutes trying to figure out why it's wobbling when you could have taken 10 minutes and read the instructions and you come out with 20 minutes to the good. Right. So seeking wisdom and understanding is like getting those clear instructions and allowing yourself to build your life successfully. So that's important. Um, there's a biblical example for this one as well. The Apostle Paul constantly prayed for churches he ministered to. You can see that throughout the entire New Testament, every church that he wrote to, he was ministering to and praying for, that they would have a clear understanding of God's will and purpose for their lives. So it's important. Ephesians 1:17 through 18 is an example of that. Then the third area is clarity of communication, being easily understood. Clarity of communication is important for you so that you can communicate clearly, and it's important for the person that you're communicating to, right? So these are, and I want to because I want to be within my time frame. The other one, and the biblical perspective for that one, or scripture for that one, is 1 Corinthians 14:8. Where if the trumpet makes an uncertain sound, who will prepare for battle? This verse uses the analogy of a trumpet call. If the call is unclear, the soldiers won't know what to do. So at the end of the day, we got to be clear about what we're saying and who we're drawing. We got to know, who it is that we serve. We got to know who it is that we are preparing for, or even if it's just leadership in your home, you got to make sure that your children know your voice and what you mean when you say what you say. So clear communication, what we say, how we say it makes a difference. So that is something, we need to make sure that we're doing on a consistent basis. And that is communicating our thoughts and intentions clearly. It's like, here again, blowing uncertain trumpet. So if that ain't the trumpet, that the sound that's normally heard, ain't nobody gonna move, because it's like, okay, I don't know who that is, but that's not our call. So people have to understand us. And if we don't communicate clearly, then it leads to miscommunication, conflict, and missed opportunities. And it happens more often than you know. Um, so clear communication, here again, it is so important, and we have to make sure that we work on that on a consistent basis. The other area is clarity of conscience. So that is, in my words, doing what is right without guilt or regret, right? Doing what is right without guilt or regret. So I used to say to my kids all the time, do what's right, because right don't wrong nobody. I don't care what somebody else does. Do what is right. You do what's right. So that way you don't have to worry about, clearing your conscience of things and all that kind of stuff, because you did what was right because it was right, and you treated people the way you wanted to be treated. And that's important, and that lends to the integrity and character of an individual. Acts 24:16 says, so I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. A clear conscience is free from guilt and allows us to act with integrity. And then the last area I want to touch on is clarity of vision. That's sharp focus. So it's one thing to have focus, it's another thing to have sharp focus. Because when you got sharp focus, listen, it ain't no teeter-totter between the lines. It's just like when you go to the optometrist and you are in the midst of that um um, that vision examination. And so they say clear here or clear here. So you may be clear on A, but you real clear on B. That's the sharp focus. And then you may be clear on C, but you're extremely clear on D. So they're going to take the combination of B and D, and they're going to create a prescription that allows you to have what? Sharp focus. So that's what we have to do. And that is making sure that our vision is clear. Write the vision. Make sure it's plain on tablets. So he that read it can run with it. Well, you can't even read it if it ain't written. So if you can't read it if it ain't written, can't nobody else read it if it's not written. And so nobody's running anywhere because the vision is not written. Hebrews 12:2, fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer, which is the author. In one translation says the author and the finisher. But this translation says the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. So it's what? It's in emphasizing the importance of keeping our focus on Jesus Christ. And so it's important that we assess ourselves and do self reflection. It is super, super, super important. So I wanted to kind of wrap up self reflection to this extent. And of course, you're going to hear some things shared, and I'll lend to self reflection as we go through the other pieces, but I wanted to kind of wrap this piece up, and then we're going to go into self awareness, because good self reflection leads to self awareness. And so that's where we're going to start next week. On Tuesday, motivation and conversation with the self work framework. We're going to begin to talk about the second element in this toolkit, or this toolbox, and that is self awareness. Well, that's all for this Tuesday motivation and conversation. Thank you as always for tuning in. Listen, if this has been a blessing to you and helped you in any kind of way to help you get some clarity, help you with your vision, help you with your communication and your understanding and your self-reflection, won't you share it with somebody else and let them know that Coach Bridget is sharing on the Self-Work Framework series, and they ought to tap in. Motivation and Conversation Tuesdays, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you right back here, same time, same place. Make sure you share it.